What
Give
does
me
it
a
need to
grade.
have my startup to, to be okay in the American market?
Yeah. Okay. So what do you need to have? I think the first thing is you
Coming
need
from
to have,
Uruguay.
yeah, coming from Uruguay, you need to have a mental picture of what that startup culture is in the U.S. And so I think this is, again, probably a two-part answer, right? Part one is if being successful in the U.S. means successful to the U.S. fundraising market, 70% of venture capital is staying in California, right? So if you come here, it's likely you're thinking there's a fundraise happening or there's a way to get some of this, venture capital money. So if that's the case, you have to think and act and kind of look like a local company. What does that mean? That means really ambitious goals. So take the market that you're going after, think about what's the biggest possible version of that market. Transportation in the US is an $800 billion market. If you're in that sector, think about, okay, where do I fit in this 800 billion? Even though right now I'm only selling trailer hitches or whatever the software version of a trailer hitch is, even if it's just, a fraction of that market, understanding where you fit in the big market is going to change the conversation with VCs. So part of that is like having the mentality and understanding kind of how the local startups think and act and talk. Accelerators are great for that. If you can go through a program like Founders Embassy, 500 Startups, obviously Y Combinator is the one that sticks out to everybody. And now we're seeing they do have an appetite for Uruguayan founders, with the Founders and Mates being a great, example of a YC company who's come and used that program as a springboard in the US market. I do think mentality is a big piece of it. Now, the second thing that I would say that you must have if you want to be successful in the US is if you decide that being successful in the US is selling to the US market, and this applies to the dev shops too that are a little different than the product companies. But when you look at the US market from a sales perspective, understanding what the buyer wants to buy, there's an easy hack for this. Go look at your buyer's website and look for the jobs they've posted. In the job description, it will say, must have experience with these software tools. And it lists out all the other software this company has bought. Plus, whoever posted the job, the applicant tracking service, also tells you something they bought. So now you know how they make decisions about buying software, right? Or you can start to piece it together. A startup that, or a small company you might be trying to sell to, they've got a VP of compliance posted on their website.
Mm-hmm.
To hire a new vice president at a company that's 100 people or less, this means it's one of the CEO's top 5 priorities is compliance. Look at that and you go, okay, this is a strategic priority. I need to make sure that our tool can actually say, we'll be fine on compliance. You can buy this tool before you hire the VP, or we're going to help you accelerate your compliance, that sort of thing, right? You got to know how you fit into that. You can do that from Uruguay. Most of the time when people are selling from Uruguay into the US market and trying to use the same techniques of selling into, Brazil or Argentina or somewhere a little bit closer, we have trouble with thinking that things are valuable when they're outside the US. So we think that the US is the best at everything. Good or bad, well, that that's the perception, right?
Mm-hmm.
That that's the way most people in the US think. Do not call a US customer and say, you should buy us, we're cheaper because our dev shop is in Uruguay.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That cheapens your offer to say the only thing great about us is that we're cheap.
Yeah.
And now I've got to convince you that we're also good.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, talk about why you're good. What have you built? What are you doing? How are your customers using it? Have that conversation about value. And then they'll say, how are you able to bring us so much value? And then you can decide if that's the time that you talk about your strategy with a back office that's based in Latin America, where it's a little bit cheaper to hire developers and build up your shop.